Hello, my name is Lucas DeBruce, and I'm a seventh grader at Shaker Heights Middle School. My project is the best simple filtration method for water. The purpose of my project is to determine the best simple filtration method for water. The threat of untreated water is common in developing and rural areas without access to water treatment plants. The people living or visiting in these areas need simple, cost-efficient water filtration methods that do not rely on electricity. My scientific question is, what simple water filtration method is the most effective in filtering unfiltered lake water? My hypothesis was that the P&G purifiers would be the most effective filter in removing contaminants from the water. I did background research on different metals, inorganics, physical properties, and bacteria in the water. I also did research on different filters, including filters that utilize different pore sizes, homemade filters, P&G purifiers, and life straw filtration. This is my procedure for constructing a homemade filter. As you can see, I cut two 2-liter bottles in half and filled them with a layer of sand, gravel, activated carbon, filter paper, and cotton balls. The gravel was to remove the biggest contaminants. Sand was to remove smaller contaminants. Activated carbon, through a process called adsorption, was used to stick contaminants to a surface and letting them pass, which removed contaminants, odors, and taste from the water. The filter paper was used to remove contaminants with the smallest pore size because it can remove all contaminants more than 20 microns. And the cotton balls we used to hold everything up. This is the procedure for testing the homemade filter. It involved pouring water through the homemade filter I already constructed. The procedure for testing the homemade boil filter involved doing the same thing as the homemade filter and also boiling the water afterwards. This is the procedure for testing the life straw. As you can see, water is poured through the gravity bag of the life straw and out through the nozzle into another container. And in the nozzle is where the filter is. The filter is a membrane microfilter, which can remove all contaminants down to 0.2 microns, which includes coliform bacteria because it is 0.5 microns. And then there's also a layer of activated carbon in the nozzle. This is the procedure for testing the P&G purifier. As you can see, I pour the P&G purifier into a basin of unfiltered water. Then I stir for 5 minutes and wait for 20 extra minutes before pouring it through a cotton cloth. The P&G purifier is basically 3 different chemicals. The first one's a coagulant, which means the positive charge neutralizes the negative charge of the contaminants, creates a bigger particle. And then by stirring the water, and the second chemical, a flocculant, the new bigger particles get sedimented at the bottom of the basin. And then when the chlorine disinfects the water, it kills the bacteria and cleans the contaminants. And then by pouring the water through a cotton cloth, it removes all the solids, only leaving the purified water. This is the procedure for testing control. It involves testing unfiltered water from Lake Erie. This is the procedure for the tests. The test kit I used was the Safe Home Test Kit, which is ranked #1 by multiple sources, including Good Housekeeping and the New York Times. It consists of a 12-in-1 test strip, which tests for 12 different contaminants in the water, including different metals, inorganics, and physical properties of the water. It is a color matching reactant, so when I place it in the water, it changes color based on the amount of each contaminant in the water. The lead test strip is basically the same, except for it only tests for lead. And the bacteria test is a vial where you pour water and it reacts with a reactant. And after 72 hours, based on the color of the water, it indicates whether or not there is bacteria present. These are my results. The yellow highlighted means that there is no EPA standards, and red highlighted means that the result is over EPA standards. So as you can see, on average, the life straw is the most effective filter, and all the tests meet EPA standards except for fluoride in the control and bacteria in the homemade filter and the control. This is a graph that I created, and as you can see, on average, the life straw is most effective in the average physical properties, but in total alkalinity, there's an increase from the control in the homemade filter, and in carbonate, there's also an increase from the control in homemade boil. This is a graph for the average inorganics, and some things I noticed is that in PNG, there is an increase from the control in chlorine, but I expected that because there was added chlorine to the water in PNG. And this is the average metal test. As you can see, on average, the life straw is the best again, but there's an increase from the control in homemade and homemade boil. And this is the lead and bacteria test, and there was no lead in any of the tests, including the control, and there was only bacteria present in the control and the homemade filter. After reading my results, I concluded that the life straw was the most effective filter, and second was the PNG purifier, and third was the homemade boil, because these all met EPA standards. And then the two ineffective filters were the homemade filter because it didn't remove bacteria, and the control because it contained bacteria and had an excess of fluoride. My hypothesis that water filtered with PNG purifier would be the most effective filter was disproven, and in fact, the life straw was the most effective filter in removing contaminants from the water. My experiment was successful because my trial showed that water filtered without using electricity and at an affordable price can be safe to drink. Because the life straw, it costs $32. It can filter up to 500 gallons of water. So for each gallon of water, it only costs 6 cents to filter. The data from my experiment can help people create more effective, simple filtration methods or choose the safest, simple water filter to use. A challenge I faced was that the Lake Erie water wasn't as contaminated as I expected. So if I were to do this experiment again, I would have used more contaminated water to better demonstrate the performance of each individual filter. After conducting my experiment, I think that the Dome Brook, which is by my house, would be more contaminated than Lake Erie because of all of the chemicals running off from people's yards. So if I were to do this experiment again, I would have used water from the Dome Brook.